You know, they're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you'll do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Napier, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Yes. What is up? MCR family? Another semi-daily edition of the show, but a little special edition because it's a reaction show. It's a post-fight show. Obviously, UFC 249 just went down in Florida. Tony Ferguson losing the fight against Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje becoming the new interim lightweight champion. Henry Cejudo defeating Dominic Cruz via demolition and retiring in the cage post-fight. A lot to get into on this card. And without further ado, let me get to my co-host on tonight's show, the wonderful, the infamous Mr. Anthony Walker from ShareDog, MMAonPoint, all the illustrious websites. Anthony, how are you, man?
I'm pretty good, man. It's been a long day. I forgot how long a UFC event lasts. So it's kind of like that to go. What have we gone almost 2 months, I guess, without any event, and now to kind of just thrust ourselves right back into it. Like, man, it was a marathon. Granted, an exciting group of fights, a lot of drama to unpack, but long night. Oh man, long day.
Yeah,
I'm beat, bro.
You always forget, like, oh, it's 8 hours of fights. Yeah, that's a lot of fights.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. So, especially in my household right now. So this is the first time that I've watched a UFC pay-per-view with my son, like right there. You know, the last one that happened, I think I came over your house and no, actually I watched it here, but my wife took him somewhere else. So they were at a friend's house, and then before that, I was at your house. Mm-hmm. And then I think before that, I did a show with TJ DeSantis in his studio, and yeah, so this is the first time just dad life and fight life colliding. Whew. Oil and water, baby, oil and water.
Yeah, you can't focus on the fights with a kid or a baby. It's impossible.
You just can't. Like the Calvin Kattar and Jeremy Stevens fight. I watched it. I understood what was going on, but I could not give it much deep thought. So it was kind of like this rush after that fight to give him a bath and have my wife feed him so I can be back in time for Ngannou and Rosenstruck. So
that was like
it's a nice balancing act. So this has been a wild night for me.
Let's start at the top, obviously. Of course, if you're listening to the show or watching the show on YouTube, hit the like button, share the show, all that, stupid YouTube shit. But get into the meat of the show, obviously, is the fights. Let's break down the fights. Let's start at the top with the complete destruction of Tony Ferguson. I mean, this had, and at least, recency bias, it reminded me a lot of like Holloway Poirier. Mm-hmm. Where just clearly, no matter how good this fighter was, technically speaking, it didn't matter. He was getting hit with the harder shots. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's all that matters is who gets hit with the harder shot more often. And Justin Gaethje was landing his harder shots more often than Tony Ferguson. Yes, Tony Ferguson really couldn't get his offensive going, his momentum going, his pace going. But that really wasn't the story of the fight. The story of the fight was that Justin Gaethje was just able to catch him time and time again, catch him with the sharp counters. He always upset that pace and upset that rhythm. And again, he just landed the harder shots throughout the fight. I mean, holy shit. The left hook was on point. The right hand was on point. The jab from Justin Gaethje, the composure, and another thing, the shot selection, the timing of Justin Gaethje. Those were two improvements in his game that we've been seeing improvements of from fight to fight, but massive improvement for this fight in terms of his timing and his shot selection. He always threw the right punch, the right combination at the right range at the right time. And that is so important. I thought Tony was going to have the advantages in timing and in shot selection. He didn't. I thought Tony was going to be the better striker because he was the smarter striker on paper. He wasn't in this fight. Anthony, your thoughts on Justin Gaethje now being the interim lightweight champion?
Justin Gaethje proved that when he is patient, when he is methodical, he is perhaps one of the most dangerous people in that division. You know, you're talking about a guy who already was one of the most dangerous people in that division, simply because the power differential and the level of punishment he can endure to exact his power differential. On most of the opposition at lightweight. Tony Ferguson coming into this fight, I think most people, and it still is, he still should be considered among the elite, of course. But we're talking about someone who we looked at as otherworldly technique wise, crazy, unorthodox. A lot of things that make Tony Ferguson a very difficult puzzle to solve. Gaethje's power, on the other hand, and patience with using that power, made that all null and void. It made it all completely awash. I think this was, granted that the fight that I'm going to draw a comparison with certainly wasn't as violent, but I'm reminded of a couple of Anderson Silva's latter fights. I'll point to the Bisping fight, and then I'll point to the Jared Cannonier fight, where you have someone who is a technical dynamo, someone who is unorthodox, someone who can be tricky, and they are trying to employ their tricks, but the other guy standing in front of them simply does not care, and a 1-2 solves a lot of these problems. Justin Gaethje went to the absolute bare bones of fundamentals to stop a lot of the weird stand switches, the sort of herky-jerky movements of Ferguson that normally catch a lot of people off rhythm. Gaethje went to the absolute bare bones basics and solved that puzzle with the power as well. I think it's a different animal when Gaethje is not rushing in like a madman, like he did in his World Series of Fighting days, like he did in the Eddie Alvarez or Michael Johnson fights. This is a scary, scary man.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that he needs to limit himself to like 2 to 3 shots maximum. Like once he starts going to the 4 and the 5 shot combination, he instantly starts unraveling from a technique perspective and starts opening himself up. That's how he pretty much got dropped with the uppercut, is that he started exchanging too much, too close to Tony Ferguson, and Ferguson was able to capitalize on his mistakes, because Justin Gaethje still isn't the technical wizard per se in terms of his punching technique. It's still very crude at times, and his balance is a little bit crude at times. But it's clear that camp has sort of dusted off the outer edges of his game and fine-tuned it to be exactly what it was tonight. I'm just blown away by it. I truly am. I think this version of Justin Gaethje could beat a Khabib. I'm not saying that he will or that he would, but he absolutely could. This version of Justin Gaethje might be the second best lightweight right now, and might be the best. And I cannot wait to see that eventual Khabib Justin Gaethje fight. Thoughts on that fight? That's most likely happening in the next 9 months, year, whenever we can get Khabib over to the U.S. Most likely.
Man, I'm very conflicted about this fight. And I think that's mainly because I just really wanted to see Tony versus Khabib. And I think we lost out on a grand opportunity for a truly historic fight, to have two men with the historic winning streaks that they were on, having this collision course, this collision at the top for the belt after so many failed attempts at putting this fight together. You know, it would have been epic when it finally happened. So I'm partly mourning the loss of that fight.
Absolutely.
And also too, I think because Tony Ferguson presents problems that Khabib has not seen before. Khabib has faced guys who hit hard. You know, he's fought Dustin Poirier, he's fought Conor McGregor, he's fought Edson Barboza, he's fought guys who can put your lights out with some punches and kicks. He's faced guys who have good wrestling backgrounds, but he has not faced a guy who has the reckless abandon and the bottom offensive game that Tony Ferguson has. So I think that's something that we'll just wonder. That's going to be one of those what ifs that we'll be debating about for decades. Like, that's going to go along with Randy Couture versus Crow Cop, of the fights that we wanted so bad that we missed out on. But for Justin Gaethje, I think he has as good of a chance as anybody to stop what Khabib has to offer. I mean, keep in mind, we still haven't really seen what his wrestling game looks like.
I would say better chance than anyone. Like, you know, I mean, he doesn't have as good of a chance as anybody. Like, that implies that Khabib can.
You're right. I should have phrased that better. But yeah,
because I mean, like, you know, we obviously have Khabib stands in the chat already. I think Khabib is the clear favorite in that matchup, but Justin could easily upset the rhythm of Khabib, just like he's done in other fights. On top of that, his counter wrestling is one of the best in the division. His leg kicks are some of the best in the division. His body work is some of the best in the division. And he's fine-tuned his approach and his game plan and his strategic sort of goals in fights a lot. And I just to think that Justin can just get, you know, dominated by Khabib just seems far-fetched. You know, I think that a Khabib Justin fight is only second to a Tony fight for the reasons that you so accurately, you know, put out there, that Tony's bottom offensive grappling game is so lethal in a sense that Khabib on top, maybe he wouldn't be as advantageous to him as previously thought. And that would be interesting, because if Khabib gets Justin to the ground, it's not like Justin has this great bottom game where he can all of a sudden, you know, get triangles, get dart strokes, get whatever he can. He can't do that. Justin would have to work his way up back to the feet and start working that, right. You know, and it's just a very different fight. I do agree with you that this night has been sort of a morning of a Khabib Tony fight, because I don't think we ever get that fight.
No, I mean, and if we do, it's going to be a depleted version of the fight. It's going to be Khabib gets dethroned, and you know, and Tony doesn't have anything to do at the time, so they just slap it together. It probably co-mains a pay-per-view, or it headlines a fight night card on free TV. That's probably the most likely scenario to see that fight now. But one thing that I think we are getting ahead of ourselves on, assuming that Khabib and Justin Gaethje is next up, I think that a lot of this going on is just setting the stage for a Conor McGregor rematch. That's kind of what I think is going to happen now. I mean, I think when this fight was announced that it was going to be Tony versus Justin Gaethje, my first thought was, well, they're probably going to hurt each other so bad, no matter who wins, it's not even going to be ready to fight Khabib when he's ready to fight. So yeah, this is just another excuse to put a Conor rematch together.
I was that didn't happen though. Justin Gaethje looked, I mean, kind of shocked. I was kind of shocked how little damage Justin in this fight. Except for that flash knockdown, he didn't take any damage.
No, he didn't. He didn't. I mean, I wonder what his hands look like, quite honestly, to lay that much leather on somebody over the course of the majority of a 5-round fight. I wonder if his hands are beat up, and that's a concern, I guess. But still, I just think that this is going to somehow pave the way for Conor McGregor to find his way in a title shot. And I think another likely scenario is that this pandemic goes on or complicates travel enough to where it could be maybe he can't get here from Dagestan. So Connor can find his way here a little easier, probably.
I can definitely see a potential Connor Justin fight happening more than them jumping Justin Gaethje for a Khabib Connor rematch.
I mean, I don't
know it makes them all the money in the world. I just don't see the mechanisms of the system working in that way.
That's because they don't have to justify it. Like, that's the thing. Like, Tony Ferguson was on like a 12 fight winning streak, and he didn't get his title shot. You know, granted,
he did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Granted, it was booked. It was booked, and things happen. But still, Tony Ferguson was the rightful number one contender for like the past 4 years. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. Like, these things just simply do not matter anymore. Like, we are applying a logic and reasoning that the UFC matchmakers simply don't give a damn about. At least when you get to championship levels and you get to the big name fighters. Like, these are endeavor decisions here.
You're obviously generally speaking right, but in this instance, I think you're absolutely wrong. Because first off, comparing anything to the Tony Ferguson situation is just apples and oranges. The guy's had plenty of title shots, has had interim titles around him. Like, he's had titles on him. So, like, he's had shots, like, in my opinion. It's not for a lack of the UFC's credit. It's more of just
circumstances.
God happening, whatever. Circumstances.
Or like biological weapon labs in Wuhan happening.
Don't give the chat any room. Okay, don't do that. More so than the UFC like ripping him off, so to speak, right?
Right.
Quickly. On top of that, the mechanisms to make a Conor McGregor, who's right now in Ireland, and a Khabib fight, who's right now in Dagestan, Russia, the logistics to make that right now is far harder than Justin, who just fought on a card that you got away with if you're the UFC. And if worse comes to worse, you have him do a tune-up, so to speak, which is crazy to think about for the UFC, against another American name. Right? Like, that's the worst case scenario in my mind, is that you don't get a Justin Khabib fight. You don't get a Justin Conor fight even due to travel restrictions. It would be Justin versus somebody that's still in the country, in my opinion. More than them jumping Justin for a Conor Khabib fight. Because how do you make a Conor Khabib fight right now? Where do you put that? You have to get both those camps and teams into the U.S. or into another place. That just seems far-fetched right now to a degree. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is. But this event happening was far-fetched. Like, there have been a lot of far reaches of reality that that now are just, they're in there. They're out there. They're out there in the world. So I'm not quite sure what is truly out of reach at this point, even if it defies logic as far as health and safety concerns are. Money talks, and a lot of money on the line, no matter how like what direction the UFC decides to take this.
True, but I mean, I do think it would be harder to travel in, like, let's say Conor and Khabib from their respective locations to Florida than it was Justin and Tony, who like both live in the States. Like, it just, for visa issues alone, like, it's a different hurdle.
Completely. Right, but also too, this was kind of slapped together. So when something was really slapped together like this was quickly put together, and no real training camps went into this, at least on Justin Gaethje's side, not like a proper training camp. At least Ferguson had time going up to April 18th to have a normal camp before all hell broke loose in the world. So I do think. I do think we're looking at what was a piecemeal together fight card, and trying to apply that logic to something that they can plan out, even in the midst of a pandemic. Clearly, you had, thank God, my laptop, I forgot to charge it, and the battery died just as Trump was about to give his address. In the middle of the UFC broadcast, but you have the president giving giving an announcement on the UFC broadcast. Dana White is part of the pandemic response team, or whatever it's called. So clearly the government
stick to sports, Anthony.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, Black Lives Matter. So I think we clearly see that the mechanisms of government and power are going to lean toward the UFC in this one. The fact that this fight got regulated in the first place shows that, yeah, all bets are off at this point.
Yeah, I think to a degree, obviously, but then again, we don't have Khabib on this card, so not completely. You're not 100% right.
Right. Well, yeah, no, but like I said, this was slapped together. Now give them 2 months to plan this, and I think they can bring just about anybody around. And then we also still have this so-called Fight Island that that is supposed to be up and running by mid-June. So if that is a reality, I'll take them at face value on that. If that is a reality and that is something that's actually going to happen, you have an international location that no government is sanctioning or controlling. You can, as long as you can get someone on a plane, you can send them to the Fight Island. So
Fight Island's a myth, just like Zuffa Boxing.
No, they're t-shirts. Okay, they're t-shirts for Fight Island and Zuffa Boxing. So I
can make t-shirts about anything. There's websites for that. They're wonderful. A little bit of ripoff, but they're wonderful.
Definitely a ripoff, but yes.
Yeah, customizable options there, just unbelievable. But digressing, I again agree to disagree on some aspects.
You're wrong.
Somebody in the chat, I think it was a longtime listener, Juan David Hernandez, saying that Justin Nate would be good. Not only that, that might be even at this point more realistic than any of the fights we're talking about because of the travel restrictions we're talking about. And I know Ant is partially right that in 2 months maybe something could change and that could happen. But if you look at the White House's own, data and their estimates, in 2 months' time, things aren't going to get better; they're going to get worse. So I just find it a little bit doubtful that all of a sudden in 2 months more things are going to open up.
I'm not saying things in general opening up. I'm just saying,
but in direct context to what we're talking about, right. I don't think enough things are going to open up for a Khabib Conor fight or a Khabib Justin fight or a Conor Justin fight. I don't think that happens right now. Maybe we get Conor Justin. That's more likely, in my opinion, than Khabib Justin right now. But who knows? Who knows? Because I respect to both. For this one instance alone, respect to both Khabib and Conor, they seem to at least be taking this situation very seriously.
Right. And Khabib's father is supposedly infected.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe they're not even inclined to deal with this hassle. And we do get a Justin Nate fight, which would be cool, but it is slapped together, planned chaos right there that we're talking about. Sort of like this card.
Yeah, exactly.
We're ready to move on to the co-main event. Henry Cejudo retiring after he defeated Dominic Cruz.
Retiring.
Retiring. I do like John Anik, though. Credit to him. I think it was John Anik. Like on the broadcast, right after he was walking out of the cage, he said Cejudo's been talking about retiring if he doesn't get paid the right way.
Yeah. It's like we've staked our claim, huh?
I like that. Thank you.
He planted that book in Anik's here before the broadcast.
John Anik is low-key been saying a lot of raw shit lately. I just want to point that out.
Yeah. And you heard the Trump disses in the 244 broadcast. In fact, yeah, we were watching that together. We pointed a couple of those out. Yeah. So and Anik's been dropping the slick shit in commentary for a minute. Yeah.
But I regardless of that, tabling that aspect of the discussion for a second, the whole retiring is you're retired. We'll get to that in a second. Are you shocked by this fight at all and how it turned out that Cejudo kind of just leg kicked him and kind of just pieced him up when he wanted to until Dominic Cruz ate a shot and couldn't get up anymore? I mean, thoughts on how the fight transpired, thoughts on the stoppage as well. I thought the stoppage was fine. I thought Cejudo looked great, to be honest. I thought he looked like he can keep going and doing this for years if he wanted to.
I was okay with the stoppage. I thought that was totally justified, and I felt that in real time. It didn't take the replay for me to come to that conclusion. It looked like a very logical ending to that fight. But I'll say this, man. I was surprised, but I shouldn't be, because we've seen the impossible from Dominic Cruz so many times that we expect it. And I know we talked to one another before the fight started. Like this morning, I think we were texting each other, or last night or something. We're texting each other about this, and like, man, I think was it? Oh, maybe I was texting Jason Burgos. It was you or Jason Burgos?
Probably Jason.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I was texting Jason.
All white people the same. That's okay.
Yeah, well, he's Hispanic, so. But anyway, so I was thinking like, kind of like getting that feeling like, man, Cruz might just make history. If Cruz wins, like, he's serious GOAT conversations that we got to start having about him. So I was in that mode. You know, I've seen, you know, I was at Dominic Cruz's last bantamweight defense before his injury woes started against Demetrius Johnson. And I kind of thought the fight could play out like that, to where you have a guy in front of him that's smaller, that's faster, that's incredibly skilled, but at the end of the day, just can't get over the size differential. And I thought that could be a serious stumbling block for Henry Cejudo. And boy, I was wrong. But at the same time, though, that's really what should have happened. What we saw happen is what happens 99 times out of 100 when a guy has a 4-year layoff, you know, and is coming off of a loss. Like, that's what's supposed to happen. Like, the fact that I felt even a tinge of surprise goes to show how great Dominic Cruz is and how he's built the aura around him, even in his absence in the cage. Henry Cejudo did what's supposed to happen. You are supposed to be able to defeat somebody who has been out of the cage for 4 years while you have been active and you have only been getting better. Also, you are supposed to be able to use leg kicks to defeat somebody who's had a career just riddled with leg injuries. So it just seemed, they're like, well, this is so logical. Why was I surprised?
1 + 1 = 2.
Exactly.
I didn't know this before, guys.
Arithmetic. Like, I'm reminded of our conversations that we had about what was it, Cub Swanson versus versus Cron Gracie, where it's like, well, why was I surprised? Because that's exactly what should happen in that scenario.
You know, I want to say that I predicted this fight entirely accurate. I predicted a second round TKO for Henry Cejudo to win. That's what he got. Just want to point that out.
Trash.
Sorry. And I will want to point out this to Matthew Wells, good friend of the show over at Slip and Dip Podcast, out there saying, hey, let me get on my soapbox here. Dominic Cruz beating Cejudo is not an upset. And I think he was thinking entirely from the perspective that you had. And that, like, Dominic Cruz has created, for lack of a better word, a myth around him. That he's this guy that can come off of any injury, any layoff, and outclass the next generation. That never happens in sports.
Oh, but he's done it twice.
No. Let me finish. He did it once. He did it once.
Okay, he didn't smash Mizugaki?
That wasn't the next generation. That was his generation.
Okay, all right, but still, he smashed Mizugaki. All right,
he did smash Mizugaki, but that wasn't coming back and beating the next generation, which was what was beating TJ Dillashaw. Mm-hmm. And everyone thought Dillashaw was the next version of Cruz, right? Cruz was coming off the 3 or 2 year layoff, and oh my God, he's not going to make it. And then he just sort of outclassed TJ Dillashaw in that decision win. To do that again is impossible. The first time alone, it's 99.9%. It's not happening. You can't do that. No matter how great you are, you're taking multiple years off, injuries. You're not supposed to win. And he did it. He fucking did it. And he became a all-time great because of that, without a doubt. Even though his resume before that was all-time great status. But he cemented that with the win over TJ Dillashaw. He cemented that status by creating that myth. So, of course, people thought, oh, he could do it again. Yeah. Ignore the fact that it's now a longer layoff than the Dillashaw win. Ignore the fact that he's now older with more injuries than the Dillashaw win. Ignore the fact that he was coming off a win heading to Dillashaw instead of a loss heading to Cejudo. Ignore those. He can do this. It's Dominic Cruz. Ring rust doesn't exist for him. He is the guy. And guess what? Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And most of the time in this instance, it doesn't.
The large majority of the time, it doesn't work. But the thing, when we point to the times that it did work, Dominic Cruz is standing right there. So it's understandable to kind of fall into that narrative a bit.
No, it's 100% understandable.
Yeah.
What I'm saying here, I hope is people understand, like, it's 100% understandable for why people thought Cruz could defy the odds again. But the public's perception of those odds were not accurate because the odds were exponentially worse than what we thought. Because you can't do this again. You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. You can't. Michael Jordan can't come back after playing the minor leagues and then be on the Wizards and win a championship. He can't do it. Sorry.
Well, that season would have gone a lot better had he not broke his ribs before, but that's another story.
Another story for another time. Maybe a Last Dance Part 2, but digressing. I don't think that this loss invalidates Dominic Cruz's claim to an all-time great status as a GOAT status. I think he's in that conversation slightly. A potential win would have cemented him as a GOAT, in my opinion. Like, you would have instantly have to talk about Cruz with Jones, GSP, Silva, Fedor, like Nunez. You would have to have that conversation. Yeah. While now it's still more of a you can maybe have that conversation. It's a little more of a what if he wasn't injured. How many wins could he have racked up? How many guys if he could have beat? It's still a little bit of that conversation. But Cejudo, digressing back to him for a second. I mean, how is he not one of the all-time greats in the lower weight classes? I mean, his run post that questionable decision win against Demetrius Johnson has been electrifying. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, I thought he won the fight against Mighty Mouse. I thought he lost that. And
I thought he won that one, actually. I scored it for Cejudo, but still, it was a very close fight.
And then he smoked everyone after that in higher weight classes, except for the Dillashaw fight, which was at 125. But digressing, like, it's just Cejudo's like on a level 2 where we need to start talking about him in that conversation more so.
I think so, and I think with Cejudo, I mean, I'm sure he would just be gushing his pants to hear this, but we need to have conversations beyond mixed martial arts defining his greatness. You know, that's an all-time great combat sport athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's just no disputing that. What he's been able to do in the UFC to be a 2-divisional champion, and the way he won those titles. I mean, however controversial you'll say the Demetrius Johnson decision was, and you know, that was a very close decision, very easy to dispute that. However, he still ended a historic run of one of the clear GOAT candidates in MMA. Then to go on and knock out TJ Dillashaw in 30 seconds or whatever it was, then to go on and absolutely obliterate Marlon Moraes, and then to go on and put a beating on Dominic Cruz. That's one of the best runs of all time. I don't think you can put too many 4-win streaks next to that. And I mean, you think of like John Jones, like 2011 or something like that, maybe.
But no, because you have like 2 like all-time greats, like GOATs. Like, you have Aldo and you have Demetrius Johnson and Cruz in that span. That's incredible. Like, those are 2 of the top 10 best fighters of all time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you beat them. Like, does Cejudo now belong in that conversation? Like, top 10 all time?
He has to. Like, he has to. And I'm maybe we're not ready to have that conversation, but I think we should start getting ready. We got to look at him in that light at this point. You know, he's earned it. He's clearly earned it.
Yeah, you can't beat 2 all-time greats and not be considered an all-time great.
Right. It's very difficult it's very difficult to make a case that someone can do that and not be that.
Yeah. And I will say this. I think the Dillashaw win, even though it's sort of been tarnished because of Dillashaw's indiscretions outside the cage, that win is incredible. Like, I think people forget about how insane that win was. We all thought Dillashaw was going to come down and torch Cejudo. Then the weigh-in pictures happened, but digressing from that, we thought Dillashaw was the guy. Even besides the loss to Cruz, like we still thought Dillashaw was the guy.
Yeah, Dillashaw would before that fight. We were talking about whether Dillashaw was better than Cruz as an all-time bantamweight. Like that's the conversations we were having about TJ Dillashaw. Where does he rank pound for pound right now? And historically, where does he rank as a bantamweight? And is he number one over Dominic Cruz? That was a very real conversation we were having, and it took about 32 seconds, and we stopped talking about that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Cejudo retiring, or air quotes retiring. Yeah. Obviously, doing this to sort of leverage his side, try to get a better lucrative deal and contract from the UFC. Even the UFC's own telecast was admitting this. So obviously his platitudes about, him being done, he's 33, he wants to start a family. While all, nice and sweet words probably aren't true and probably just for show. Thoughts about how quick we do see a new contract be put in front of Cejudo and him sign it and him be back in the fold?
I would think that we're gonna probably wait until either this pandemic dies down, or like the restrictions regarding it die down, or Fight Island is like a real thing and Jose Aldo can come over, because I don't think it's going to take it's not going to be a Peter Yan fight that's going to get Cejudo out of bed and that's going to get the UFC to throw the bank at him. It's it's not going to be Aljamain Sterling that's going to make Cejudo be like, you know what, I'm coming out of retirement. It's going to be a name like Jose Aldo. It's going to be another legacy building name that will do it. So that's the sort of names that we have to think about that will lure Cejudo out. Because other than that, I don't think he has that much leverage as far as getting money from the UFC. He's not a huge pay-per-view draw. Maybe the numbers on this will come back and say otherwise, but you also have Ferguson Gaethje at the top of the card, and you also have a very unique condition as far as
who aren't big draws as well. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, exactly. So we got a unique situation where there's literally nothing else to watch, sports wise, like literally nothing else. So I don't know if you can really make that comparison and the UFC honor it truly in negotiations. So maybe this is all for naught, but I say give it maybe a year and we'll see Cejudo again.
The one, just to play devil's advocate here and just to present counter arguments, Cejudo is lucky in a position where the next guys up are Aljo and Peter Yan. Do you think Dana White wants to make a vacant title fight between those two? You think he's excited for that one? The two guys that he clearly doesn't like for some reason?
Probably not. I mean, I can tell you why he probably doesn't like Aljamain Sterling.
Well, we know why, but yes,
yeah, but the I don't know. But it's also a title fight that you can just slap on to ESPN Plus to fulfill some sort of contractual obligation and be done with it. So that's something that that could be useful to them. It's not like they're going to get any more money from ESPN with a different name on it. So they got guaranteed money. So you can just slap anybody on this. One thing about the ESPN deal, the way it's structured, star power isn't nearly as important as it once was. So this is the time for an Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan vacant bantamweight title fight, because fuck it. If you had a different fight on top of that, then all right, go slap it together and hope one of them becomes the star when the fight's over with.
I was gonna present another aspect of the argument of the flyweight division and how Cejudo is the only guy that really is bringing the flyweight division any attention. But then I instantly remembered that Dana White could get rid of that and the UFC could get rid of that division, no problem. That's not leverage at all. So you're probably right, and I mean my devil's advocate here is kind of running out of steam, because you're largely right, and I agree with you that Cejudo doesn't have much leverage here. And in large aspect, not any single fighter anymore has leverage. Like, I mean, Connor has the leverage that he once did in 2016, 15, right? Like that's gone now.
Well, he doesn't have the same leverage, but he has a lot of leverage.
He has leverage compared to everyone else in the UFC.
Right, exactly.
Does he have the leverage to now get equity in the company? No. Like his peak leverage happened in a way, or at least in terms of how the system and industry was structured to where the fighters had more power and had more say, at least the top fighters did. That's gone, like you said. You know, it's the ESPN relationship and the bag that ESPN gives them that the UFC cares about more than anything. Because that guaranteed bag is enough to make the UFC happy.
And that guaranteed bag is why we're even having this discussion now.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, and there's a reason why we are talking about Stipe Miocic, you know, being stripped of his title in this period of time. A first responder, which is his title during a
disgusting.
It's because no fighter has leverage anymore in the UFC. You know, if they ever even did at any point in time during Zuffer's run, or at least the run during Endeavor as well. I think, you know, if Cejudo really wanted better contracts, it should be a time to collectively bargain. But that's maybe a topic for another time, Anthony. Any other thoughts on Cejudo Cruz before we move on?
Cejudo will be back. Cruz, not so sure. I think it's more realistic that he doesn't come back. But the fierce sort of competitor that he is, he probably won't. He probably can't sleep with himself retiring on a loss. So I honestly would expect to see him versus Uriah Faber again. I can see that fight being booked soon.
I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, at this point, it's fine. It's fine. Maybe he will CJ Dillashaw back.
Come on, Dominic Cruz, Frankie Edgar. I've always wanted that fight. Give me that one.
Yeah, I'll take it.
You're right. That's fine. Like you know, a main card opener for a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Or like a fight night main event. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. In fact, you're right. You're right. Cruz versus Edgar, and then have Faber welcome Dillashaw back off his suspension.
Time out. Fuck that. Sorry, Edgar. Let's get the greatest featherweight of all time and the greatest bantamweight of all time. Both come bosses. Both now in the bantamweight division. Aldo Cruz. The winner can fight Cejudo. And you know Cejudo would take the winner of that fight. Yeah. And the UFC can guarantee themselves a title contender that they like.
Or Cejudo will take the loser of that fight.
Hey, he does like that. He does like taking losers. Thing with him. LFC saying Cruz versus Faber 3 would be good. They already had their third fight. I was there for it live.
Me as well.
The Forum.
The Forum. Yeah, that was 199.
Such a good card.
That was a great card.
But digressing, I'm in favor of like a fourth or fifth fight, depending on the rivalry. But there's some fresh matchups here for Cruz that you can make that are interesting, that have some legacy to them. So an Aldo fight, an Edgar fight, I would like to see those more. Let's move on though. Francis Ngannou. Oh my God. I mean, this was kind of terrifying. I'm not going to lie. In Rosenstruck, when he was knocked out, I was getting a little bit worried for him. Not going to lie. This was violent, abrupt, and again, utterly terrifying. And then you had Francis Ngannou be so like quiet and nice and polite in the post-fight interview. It was jarring. I thought, I don't know, like it was like watching like Freddy Krueger in action, and like in its like primal perfect form. It was like, oh, this is a serial killer that can just be calm, but like, you know, a good way.
It was more like Dexter to me. It was just,
ooh, yes.
It was so workmanlike and so devoid of passion. I didn't know. I was genuinely sitting here with fear quivering through my bones. Like, good Lord, like this man is real. Like he really exists. This is like a mythical creature that just went out and smoked Jared Rosenstruck.
I thought Rosenstruck was really going to give him some work. I even thought Rosenstruck could win this fight on the low. Like, I didn't pick him, but like I was like, ooh, Rosenstruck. You know, he puts his offense together a little bit better than Ngannou, in my opinion. His defense is trash, but Offensively, I think he puts it together a little bit better. Nope, doesn't matter. Ngannou just walked up to him and slapped him up.
And that's the thing that's scariest about Francis Ngannou. It doesn't matter, like, because from a technical standpoint, he does some terrible, terrible things. He is off balance with his punches. He telegraphs nearly everything. He's got his chin straight up in the air. He doesn't have a very good gas tank, but it doesn't matter because if he touches you, you are done. Like, and it's like he knows this. He stuck his chin out and charged forward. Rosenstruck definitely tapped his chin quite a few times, and it didn't matter. It mattered nothing. Rosenstruck still almost died in there. And then to just put the nail in the coffin, Ngannou then gets on the mic and just big brothers him like it was nothing. Like he just like, yeah, the kid's got potential, but no, he's not ready.
But he said it so like with the
and it was like genuinely like, oh, I'm concerned about his well-being smile. Like,
and before the fight, he was like, this guy called me out. Like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, he called me out, but
he just walked him down and beat him up in 4 punches. It was so good.
Yeah, it was.
Oh
This was seriously one of the most terrifying performances I've ever seen in the UFC.
How did Stipe survive that first round? Like anything post the Derek Lewis fight, if we're being honest, for Francis Ngannou, makes me go back to that Stipe fight and that first round in particular, where Stipe did get caught, but he survived it and then just out wrestled Ngannou for the next 4.5 rounds. It's incredible. It's incredible what Stipe was able to survive because he was hit with some shots in that first round. People forget, man. I don't know how he made it. I don't know how.
Yeah, it's amazing that fight went as long as it did. Like, it went the distance because to imagine taking a Francis Ngannou shot flush and living to tell that tale. Like, I'd be very surprised if Rosenstruck remembers anything from fight week.
And then in the next fight to get knocked out by DC with like a short little like hook in the clinch, right? Like that was so weird.
Maybe not unrelated though. Maybe not unrelated.
I wonder to go back, how long were those fights apart? Around. I don't know.
Like 6 months or so, I believe. I think one was in January, the other was July International Fight Week.
Might be too much for that type of fight, to be honest. Like he should maybe face DC like in the fall. But digressing, Ngannou, what's next for him? I think the UFC is going to rip him off somehow. I really believe that. I don't know how they're going to do it, so to speak. Like, I don't know what the matchup's going to be. I don't think it's going to be DC. I don't think DC takes Ngannou.
I don't think DC wants that. DC is just too aware of his mortality at this point, at his age, this close to retirement. Keep in mind, this guy was planning on retiring like a year and a half ago, and now he's still fighting. Possibly, looking at this trilogy fight with Stipe, which would determine the greatest heavyweight in UFC history, in my opinion, whoever wins that fight. But now you have this pandemic that has slowed the forward moving train of the UFC, and Stipe wisely, partly because he is a first responder as a firefighter in Cleveland, like he's not trying to fight at all, and says he can't get a proper training camp, so he's waiting for all this to boil over and just be done with, and then he can resume training and do a real camp. Quite honestly, I think the most realistic scenario is that the UFC strips Stipe. I think they'll offer a vacant title fight to DC to face Ngannou. I don't see DC taking that fight.
Agreed.
Maybe, just maybe, we see John Jones versus Ngannou for the vacant heavyweight title.
John Jones doesn't want that work. I'm telling you guys right now. John Jones' heavyweight run is done. It's done. That's never happening now.
I don't know, man. John Jones is
never going up to heavyweight and fighting there. I'm telling you guys that right now. Okay. The second he started having some trouble in the light heavyweight division with all these middleweights and new names like Dominic Reyes, I think that made him question what he can do in the heavyweight division. I also believe that John Jones is actually nearing the end of his own career, to be quite honest. For a combination of, situations outside the cage that are constantly getting him in trouble, and just he is facing his own mortality in a way, like similar to DC in a way, where I think John Jones is starting to get a little more aware of his own limitations. That's why his own game has changed in a way. His own style has changed slightly. I'm far more reserved in what he does. I mean, it's what GSP did post Matt Serra, but like to the max. And John Jones didn't take an L to do that. I think that's just age or whatever that's going on outside the cage to a degree.
Or perhaps too, not that I'm sure it could be a factor, but then also just the fact that keeping a belt as opposed to going out and taking a belt presents two different mentalities in a lot of fighters. So so maybe we will see a more freed, I guess 2009, 2010 era John Jones mentality in the cage. If he were to have a vacant heavyweight title fight, and then someone like Francis Ngannou, who, as we said, technically is not very good in a lot of ways. Someone like Jones can exploit that, but you just have to be perfect to do it.
I don't see how John Jones, even though he technically speaking is far better than Francis Ngannou, I don't think John Jones has the strength for the heavyweight division, or at least that heavyweight in Francis Ngannou. Like Dominic Reyes was able to outmuscle him. Reyes was able to outmuscle him, outstrength him, outpower him. Francis Ngannou could probably do that.
Yeah, but Jones also is a guy who kind of fights to his level of competition as well. So, quite frankly, he probably didn't take Dominic Reyes or Anthony Smith or Thiago Santos very seriously going into it, at least as seriously as he did Daniel Cormier or Rashad Evans or Shogun or some of the other killers that he's faced.
I don't buy that. Similar to how, like, at the boxing comparison now, so follow me here, like Triple G, when everyone said, "Oh, Triple G like wants you to punch him, he wants you to hit him, and that's how he gets going." It's like, no, motherfucker, he is just hittable. It's now fight after fight after fight of him just getting hit a lot. That's just a sign of him being hittable. Similar to John Jones, like, it's not like him taking a fight off does happen. Let's say fighters do take fights off. Fighters maybe take fighters lightly. But if it's fight after fight after fight consecutive, then maybe it's not just you just taking these guys lightly. There seems to be more going on here from a logical perspective.
Possible.
And plus, John Jones is in his mid-30s now. I mean, he's what, 33, 34 now?
32, I think. 32 or 33. Well, he's in that range. So it's that is the point where your body is going to have some things to say about your athletic prowess.
And not only that, his prime was obviously much earlier than others because he was a prime champion at the light heavyweight division at 22, 23 years old. So he's been at the top for a decade plus now. There's going to be a drop-off eventually. Like, it's unheralded in MMA to see a 15, 20-year run. Like in boxing, you occasionally will see that from time to time. You don't see it in MMA. It's the lifespans of MMA fighters is far shorter than other combat sport athletes, in my opinion.
Well, we also just don't have enough of a sample size too. Like the UFC as we know it hasn't been around for about 30 years or so. So you just don't have that many people to look at and compare those same numbers. So I think maybe in 20 years we can have this conversation again, and we'll have a lot more data to look at. But you could be right. You could be right. But I think Francis Ngannou, I think he's going to find himself in a vacant heavyweight title fight next. That's sort of what I'm sticking with. I think Stipe is getting stripped. The way the UFC is moving through this whole ordeal, I don't think they're waiting for Stipe to fulfill his civic duties. They're stripping that title, and they're going to try to keep things pushing.
Any way that they realize the backlash they're getting because of this, and they just do an interim title?
I mean,
quickly for those who are listening, for the ESPN deal, their pay-per-views have to be headlined by title fights. Interim title fights do fulfill that obligation contractually speaking. So, in theory, they could have a Francis Ngannou interim title fight on the top of a pay-per-view, and that fulfill ESPN's wishes. Just want to point that out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, damn, I forgot what I was about to say.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all good. What were we talking about?
Interim title fight. Do you think they do that instead of just stripping?
Oh yeah, well, I was gonna say they turned down Ngannou versus Rosenstruck as an interim title fight. Apparently, Ngannou said he asked the UFC about that, and they shot it down.
Yeah, but that's a bad fight for an interim title fight. Like you could see like Ngannou, let's say John Jones, right, to give you that.
Yeah, but you're looking at you're also looking at a scenario where you're really not spoiled for choice in the situation that they were in. You're looking at a limited pool of fighters that you can take and put a fight card together tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So if there's ever a point where fighters have any real leverage, it's then. It's a top contender that is a well-known name that's that close to a title saying, hey, I want this and that, and they turned it down. So I don't think that they're going to do, maybe they'll do the interim. It'll be for some sort of belt that he fights for next. Yeah. But as far as the backlash stopping them from stripping Stipe, I doubt it. I really doubt it. The backlash that they got for running UFC 249 in whatever iteration that it was supposed to be didn't stop them. What stopped them from us having this conversation after a for all intents and purposes unregulated fight in Tachi Palace was the governor making a call. So any backlash outside of established power bases doesn't mean anything. Us wimps and weaklings of the MMA media can jump on these microphones and jump on Twitter and scream and shout all we want and write all our op-eds about, how the world is falling apart. That don't mean a goddamn thing.
No, I'm specifically not talking about media, because media has very little power over the UFC. Fan backlash, because fans didn't really combat the UFC.
Man, fans ain't backlashing shit. The fans ain't backlashing a damn thing.
Somebody that fans like. So I'm just wondering, like, in that concept, Stipe is a firefighter. Like,
man,
you think about stripping him in this time, like they're in every code of conduct in theory.
Oh, absolutely. Like you're acting like the MMA fan base is comprised of rational, normal human beings, and that is not the case. At least there's a vocal minority out there that they seem to take their cues from. So when Jacare tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday, and the myriad of question marks that arise in that situation, and you wonder, wow, why is this still going on? And how exactly are they being strict about these safety protocols? And why didn't they stop his traveling from Orlando to Jacksonville? And what you can pose all these questions you want, and there's always some fucktard in the comments or on the timeline that has something really unintelligent to say that sounds like a UFC press release. So there is no fan backlash. It's a bunch of getwits. It's a bunch of people that want to that say something really stupid and tag at Dana White, hoping that he retweets it. Like that's really what you get. It's a pathetic sideshow of malcontents and nincompoops.
I will never understand combat sports fans standing promoters and promotions.
It's almost as stupid as managers standing for promoters, but that's a whole nother story.
That's worse.
That's so much worse.
That's actually worse. Like a fan standing for like a Dana White or an Eddie Hearn or Oscar De La Hoya, whoever, like who cares, right? Like that's like you're a fan. A manager, you're actually like portraying your duty as a manager, but that's just being beside the point.
Yeah. Whatever. That's another story.
Another story for another time. I guess. But let's go back to the fights. Calvin Kattar defeating Jeremy Stevens via KO, TKO, elbows, and ground and pound in the second round. I'm glad I picked this fight right, though I was very hesitant to pick it because Calvin Kattar is one of those guys where I think that he is extremely talented, but doesn't always put it together at the right time, like shot selection and timing.
Mhm.
Those are things like if you're really good at that, you can jump up to the higher levels of a division much faster. Calvin Kattar didn't really have that. He had the technique. He had the punches. He had the kicks. He had the wrestling, the grappling. He had everything in terms of a technical perspective. He just didn't know when to put it together and in what order. He is finally doing that. And it was apparent in this fight. He had every answer for Jeremy Stephens from a technical perspective because he knew what shot and what combination to throw and when. And that is an added development in his game. I thought his crisp combinations at range too, like they were long combinations, were quite impressive. I mean, there's no way that if you sit down and watch Calvin Kattar and let's say Justin Gaethje, right, that you will say that Justin Gaethje is the better technical striker. Calvin Kattar is really developing into one of the better guys in the division, and I cannot wait to see what he continues to develop into. That this was just, I mean, a brutal beat down at the end of it too. So I was really impressed and really looking forward to see what is next for Calvin Kattar.
Calvin Kattar is definitely one of the guys that I think we really need to be keeping our eye on at featherweight. In my opinion, he is one of the more polished, pure boxers in mixed martial arts. I think he's phenomenal. He's very sharp. Also a very intelligent guy too. He doesn't approach every fight the same way. He is very, very wise once he gets in that cage. Wise outside the cage too. He's actually actually runs a local promotion in the New England area. He's a smart guy, but I'm really looking forward to every Calvin Kattar fight.
Yeah,
it's just and quite frankly, I think had he had the original booking with Zabit Magomed Sharapov in Boston, I think we might have been looking at a different result. To have that fight drastically change, to be booked like a few weeks later in Russia, and I think that threw things off for him. Kattar is somebody to watch, man. That's a featherweight we need to be keeping our eyes on.
I'm so curious to see get a period in time where we have like that true turnover in that division, where we get Volkanovski, Holloway, Ortega, Rodriguez, Zabit, Kattar, all at the top mixing it up finally, because it's sort of been a staggered generational turnover in that division, right? You've had like Holloway and Ortega move up first amongst those prospects, and then Volkanovski, and now Zabit sort of getting his shine. But there's a lot of guys that really, Rodriguez got a chance obviously with Frankie, but he lost that. There's a lot of young talented guys that I think are finally catching that sort of turn and development in their game. And I cannot wait to see these young featherweights really mix it up. Like there's so many different machinations of matchups here where we can get, and all of them are fun. All of them are exciting. And you add like the veterans of like a Korean Zombie in the mix. It's just hellacious fun. Featherweight division continues to be one of the best divisions in the sport, in my opinion.
Without a doubt.
Let's move on to a fight that I have no opinion on. Greg Hardy defeating Yorgan De Castro via unanimous decision. This was a very shitty, low-level heavyweight fight, as I expected.
Yeah, why are we still forcing Greg Hardy on these main cards? I get it. Okay, yeah, he was an NFL star, and maybe this is the appeal to get like the general ESPN watcher to look at it. But I mean, if the general appeal of his name, just to get like, some random sports fan who has ESPN to take a look at this fight. If they turn this on just to watch Greg Hardy and they see the trash that he has been throwing on our lawn for the past year and some change,
the whole thing, his whole career.
Yeah, it's like for the past year and some change, like or 2 years or whatever, he's been a part of the UFC, whether that be Contender Series or the Octagon proper. Like we haven't seen much good. I mean, yeah, he has improved, and I'll give him his credit on that. He has definitely improved as a fighter, but this is not high quality fighting. This is regional mixed martial arts that was opening a pay-per-view. Hard pass.
And he opens like every pay-per-view he's on, and I truly don't believe they get an increase in buy rate because of him.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it at this point. I could see maybe the first 1 or 2 bookings because the novelty of it, but at this point, the novelty has to have worn off. It has to have worn off.
I agree, and plus, I don't think they really promote like Greg Hardy that much either. Like they clearly like have him on the card for that, like, oh, it's Greg Hardy, but then don't push him as much because it's Greg Hardy. You know what I mean? Like they're caught in between what they want to do with him, and very clear as day that they're having this issue. But you're right. Like it's a regional heavyweight that's like slightly improving from fight to fight. That's now being forced on us on the pay-per-view cards we pay for. Yeah, that's just not right. It's not right to your consumers, to your fans. It's not right at all.
In a normal world, like Greg Hardy's next fight, if he has like some spectacular knockout in LFA, then he get a call from the UFC. Then we see his UFC debut on the second prelim of the night or something like that. That's what we would normally be experiencing, not a pay-per-view main card to open it. No, absolutely not. At least they didn't put Rachel Ostovich on this card too. Jesus Christ.
Hey, how dare you besmirch her name?
Yeah.
She's lovely. Lovely lady.
She certainly is.
She is. Lovely lady. Anyways, moving on from that. Greg Hardy's trash. I don't want to see him on my TV. And I really didn't watch the fight that much, I'll be quite honest. Unfortunately, speaking of another fight, I didn't really watch that much because I was busy. Anthony Pettis defeating Donald Cerrone. I know this decision was a little bit contentious, I'll say. I don't know if it was truly controversial or it was robbery. I don't know. But I do see some people out there saying that Donald Cerrone won. And from what I saw here and there, because I was in and out of the room, it did look like it was a close competitive fight between two older, faded legends to a degree. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it other than maybe that both guys should maybe think about retiring, to be honest. Now, I'll be honest, there's a lot of fighters on this card that could call it quits, and I'm completely fine with that. And it makes me think that there's a lot of fighters right now in the UFC that maybe they should retire. Like we're talking about maybe 100, 200 fighters that could easily retire right now in the UFC. And the UFC would instantly be hurt for business. And the fans would instantly lose a ton of names they only know about. Right. But that's going to happen sooner rather than later. I just want everyone to be aware of that, to be ready for it, because
you heard it here first.
It's going to be soon, guys, when guys like Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone, those fights are no longer possible. And we're getting very, very close to that point. Very close. Because there was points where, I was in and out of the room, didn't watch it in its entirety. But what I did see, I didn't like. It was two old guys fighting. And it felt that way. And I don't appreciate low-level sports. I don't appreciate old guy sports that much. That's not what I watch sports for. Anthony, your thoughts on this fight?
I mean, there's always going to be a market for a Pettis versus Cerrone. I mean, Bellator, Oscar De La Hoya is out there. Like, there is always going to be a market for something like that, and there's always going to be somebody willing to watch it.
We have Vitor Belfort fighting in one championship. Like, I'm completely understanding of the reality that we're going to see these guys fighting for a lot longer than they should be. But still, I mean, these guys will be retiring more sooner than later in perspective.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I wasn't too mad at this fight. It was an entertaining fight for sure. I do understand some people a little upset about the decision, but it was a close fight. But I think the difference was Pettis just has more power in his hands. And that was shown over and over again. He was able to land consistently on Cerrone. And Cerrone did have a very good moment or two here and there. It was a big hit kick he landed in the last round that was, I mean, reminded me how tough Pettis is. Pettis is, I think, very underrated as far as his toughness and durability is concerned, at least in the cage, what the sort of punishment he's willing to put himself through. But, I mean, I'm okay with it. Like, this was another one of those fights where it was kind of slapped together. These names were available and people liked them, so they threw it together. Cool. You know, It served a purpose. It has literally nothing to do with neither the welterweight nor the lightweight division as far as rankings and title contention is concerned. It does nothing for either one of their legacies, quite honestly. It just happened to entertain us, and mission accomplished.
I largely agree with you. Quickly going to run down the rest of the card, and Anthony, you can jump in and give your thoughts on about any of these if you want. Alexei Oleinik defeating Fabricio Verdum via split decision and kind of just beat him the fuck up on.
Yeah,
at least on
ring rust is real.
That was wild to see Alexei Oleinik throw combinations.
Just grossly outboxing Fabricio Verdum.
Yo, somewhere
outboxing him.
Somewhere Randy Couture was just shedding a happy tear watching the fight. Okay, let's be honest about it. The dirty boxing, the old man work that Oleinik put in.
It's like men with receding hairlines everywhere were just thrilled.
So pumped, man. So excited.
I felt a little inspired.
I bet you did, Anthony. I think both these guys should retire. I will say that. I think this is one of those fights where both can walk off if they want. Fabricio Verdum, clearly, he looked old.
I'll put it this way. There was, and in fact, I believe you were there with me at the Dominance MMA Media Day with Fabricio Verdum. I don't know if you heard the rumor in the room that Verdum was signing to BKFC.
Yeah,
right. So we're not far. He was signing to BKFC. If that's true, that's true. He was signing to BKFC. That is a graveyard of legitimacy. So I'm not surprised that someone that was supposedly close to signing to such a backwoods, just total shit show of a quote unquote organization would look that bad in a legitimate fight in a real organization. Doesn't shock me one bit.
You're right. You're right, though. You're absolutely right. Anyways, Carlos Esparza defeating Michelle Watterson in a largely uneventful fight via split decision. I mean, they were just practicing very safe social distancing, so I can't be mad at it.
I'll say this, though. To have two opposing 30-27 scorecards when there were definitely rounds that belonged to Esparza and belonged to Watterson, just total horseshit. I mean, like now the judges can't say, oh, well, the crowd influenced me. There was no crowd. You're an idiot.
To be fair, it is Florida.
There's a state full of idiots.
There's only one other commission worse than the Florida Commission.
Texas?
Texas.
Okay. I mean,
and even then, like they fight over that position.
Yeah, it's a state full of idiots. I mean, Florida, man, exist.
And do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Am I frozen on your screen?
You are frozen on my screen.
Hold on, let me refresh my page really fast.
Right. Am I still on the show? That's what's up. If I'm still on the show, what's up?
Don't worry, I'm back. Well, I know Ant he gets a little bit worried about being a mic. Don't worry, Ant, I'm here.
Oh, no. What was I on air still right then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I said something, but before I could really get into my wit and charm, then you pop right back in. So there was that.
I do wish that these two fighters kind of exchanged more on the ground. I was really looking forward to seeing the ground exchanges between the two, and they just never wanted to commit to that for obvious reasons. And that's not surprising. Like this became a very lightly contested sparring match on the feet. Let's be quite honest.
Yeah, that's kind of what I expected this fight to be. I wasn't looking at this as a potential fight of the night. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Speaking of a potential fight of the night, though, Vicente Luque defeating Nico Price in a fight that I knew was going to be badass, and it was badass, and to the point where like it was so badass that the stoppage, which was a doctor stoppage, which usually gets a lot of oh man, fight was really starting to get good. It was like no, I mean I got my fill in.
Yeah, it's like we're good.
We're good. I'm good here. I'm full. I'm happy. I mean, this was a buffet of violence. It was so good. You had the better technician in Luque, who was, I think, really chopping up Nico Price's legs, landing obviously the better shots. But Nico Price was coming in with these fucking bolo shots out of nowhere, man. Like, Nico Price is such a ugly fighter. And when I mean that, I don't mean like from a like physical perspective. Like, I mean just from a technical perspective, he is ugly. He is not good to watch in some aspects. Like, you wouldn't watch him and try to learn from him.
Yeah, it's not gonna be like an instructional video.
No,
but it's effective.
Oh my God,
extraordinarily violent.
He's a poor man's Justin Gaethje.
Yeah,
right. Like in like its best, most violent form. And that eye was nasty. I mean, the pictures, like the really nice pictures we're seeing now. Whoo, man, that's gonna be one for the books for sure. Rob Iman, shout out to Rob Iman, longtime listener. I know.
Oh, yeah, Rob Iman, what's up, homie?
Longtime listener of you and myself, saying Luque versus Lawler should be next. I absolutely agree with that. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm so in favor for that. That is a perfect fight.
Can't wait for that. But yeah, any thoughts about Luque and Nico Price? Because this was probably one of the fight of the nights, if not winning the fight.
I mean, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. They because this was a fight that didn't necessarily need to happen because they've already fought before, and just similar results. You just wanton destruction and chaos. But that's what they wanted. They just wanted gratuitous violence. So it delivered. I'm happy with it.
I am as well. Speaking of another fight that produced violence in its own way, Bryce Mitchell versus Charles Rosa. I mean, where does Bryce Mitchell rank? I'm not the biggest fan of him outside the cage, but beside that, he's clearly one of the most gifted prospects in the game.
Oh, by far.
His groundwork is just. It reminds me of a Khabib. It really does. I know that's hyperbolic, and it is, but like it reminds me of like watching like Khabib versus Abel Trujillo, and it was like, oh my God, this guy is landing anything he wants on this dude. Any grappling maneuver he wants, he's fucking landing.
Yeah, and then the ability to just stick on someone.
Yes,
which I think is probably the most dangerous thing that a grappler can have on them. It's just the ability to always be on you. And you'd see, those rare times you'd see Rosa really be able to advance out of a horrible position, potentially stand up, potentially initiate a scramble. And no matter what, no matter where he was in that cage, no matter where his arms or legs or any other extremity was, Bryce Mitchell had a hold of something and reset every single time. That is an invaluable skill set for anyone who has grappling-based offense.
And it's not like Charles Rosa is a bad grappler.
Charles Rosa is a
really good,
very good grappler. Which to see him get that outclassed, I mean, we're talking multiple 10-8 rounds without much damage,
if not 10-7 rounds.
I really. Like he put a pure clinic on him. There were the idea that you can that you can go for a single leg and instantly transition into a twister setup doesn't make sense. And then that you can do this literally over and over and over and over again. That you go from twister to arm triangle to twister to arm triangle to you're standing up for about 0.4 seconds until you grab his arm and arm drag him into a twister or an arm triangle. Repeat, rinse and repeat. It was over and over. It was unrelenting. Bryce Mitchell, the only disappointing thing about Bryce Mitchell's performance is that he did not give a COVID-19 conspiracy theory in his post-fight speech. That's the one thing I was upset about. I just wanted to hear the foolishness.
Speaking of that, totally not shocking when all of Tony Ferguson's corner were not wearing their mask properly. Not surprising at all. At all. Just want to point that
out. One of them for sure I knew wasn't going to just because he's a pretty boy. So I knew he wasn't going
to. Moving on.
That's my man, though. That's my man, though. So
Planet, man. Those guys are legends over there. Ryan Spam also picking up a win against Sam Alvey. I have no real thoughts about that split decision. It was a fun little slugfest, sloppy fight, I guess, at the low level. It was a card opener.
The lack of defense in this fight, particularly from Ryan Spann, just it was giving me serious anxiety. Like I was like tugging at my hair the entire time, the way he kept getting crushed with that check hook over and over again. That check hook just kept landing and kept landing. He is very lucky to walk out there with the decision. I understand the scoring on that for him to get the win, but man, he got out of there with the skin of his teeth. He is very fortunate to walk away with the W.
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And that's it for the entire UFC 249 card, headline obviously by Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, with the co-main event of Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz. The first fight card back since all of the coronavirus and pandemic that's been happening. Thoughts on the buy rate? Thoughts on how big this was? You know, did it feel big? To me, it really didn't, to be quite honest. I know it felt big. It felt very much within the community.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, within our community, it's hard to get a gauge on what the outside world feels. So that I think it's very important to remember that we are inundated with MMA and combat sports all the time, and we're very active participants in the Twitter community and Instagram and YouTube comments and all that. So we're privy to all of this, and we follow our own metrics and our own channels and whatnot. So that exists in its own bubble. But I think this probably had some greater ramifications as far as viewership outside of our bubble. I do know that there were a lot of media members who were tweeting about the amount of casual friends that are friends or relatives of theirs that were texting them, asking them about this card, or texting them about their reactions to certain finishes and whatnot. So there might have been some sort of ripple effect outside of our bubble. But I think, in light of especially Jacare's diagnosis yesterday, the fact that we've got another card Wednesday and another card, I believe, next Saturday as well, there could be some backlash to a lot of this attention. And I think that's going to be more interesting to see. Now, I will say that I do think this was watched by a lot of people, but I don't think they all bought it.
Well, that's the new age for sure.
Yeah, this is the most pirated event in UFC history. I'll just go out there and say that.
No, it's not even close. It's going to be Conor Khabib. Like, I bet I can find articles about how that was illegally streamed by tens of millions of people.
Well, I mean, in that case, though, you had people who otherwise would have sought the fight out anyway. This case, though, you got people who are unemployed, limited resources, starved for some sort of sports, and unsure about where to put their dollars. So yeah, they're gonna pirate the shit out of this.
I think the usual people, the usual suspects, so to speak, are gonna pirate it. But I mean, I mentioned this earlier on the show. We have Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje at the top. We have Cejudo and Dominic Cruz. None of those guys are pay-per-view stars. Not even close to that term. So let's say this is a normal schedule, normal year, right? Normal sports are running. This is doing $150.
Oh,
$250,
yeah.
Right? Like, this isn't doing big numbers. So, like, in my mind, like, even with like no sports happening, people are bored. I had some casual buddies of mine, hit me up and say, "Hey, I'm watching the fights, whatever. Let me know what's happening."
Like TPV casual.
No, fuck that guy. Don't bring his name up on this show. How dare you?
Loser.
Fucking pill popping, wife cheating loser. Digressing though. That group of people that are now casuals that are interested is not enough to make this go from 150, 250,000 pay-per-view buys to 750, 1 million, like a John Jones number. Like, that's not happening. This is going to hit tops 450, 500,000, top end.
But
I don't think that's. But that's the top end projection. If you're thinking that all these sports fans are dying for some sports are now going to be interested in Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, the thing is, like,
that's not happening. That's doing 300K.
Yeah, in the previous pay-per-view era,
maybe
where you could just press the button on your remote. Yeah, you might creep up to 700,000 or whatever, just impulse buys. You just might. But when it's so easy to pirate, and in order to legally watch it, you have to go through a separate paywall to then go to the regular paywall. No, and in this economic climate, no, it's just not realistic. It's simply not realistic. And I think especially, and maybe, of course, MMA fans are going to do things however they do them, but when you've already taxed the MMA fan so much already, following mixed martial arts is an expensive endeavor in and of itself. Like, we're fortunate that we do work for media companies. We can write it off on our taxes or their expenses. Yeah. So now you're independent, so you can write it off on your taxes. I could write things off on an expense report. At my time, when I was one of the main guys at SureDog, I could do that. So yeah, there are. We don't have the same perspective that the average person has when they are constantly shelling out money to watch something. And they're crazy if they think that all these people were buying this fight tonight. They're crazy.
I think the UFC is going to be a little bit disappointed on the return on this card. I'm going to be quite honest. Now, luckily, they're making 80% of the revenue back.
ESPN will be disappointed. The UFC is just fine with it.
I don't think ESPN cares. I will say this. I think the prelims that are on ESPN, you're going to see pretty good numbers with those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it's free.
It's free. It's live sports. It's on ESPN. You have Don Cerrone, Anthony Pettis. So you have some names that people know about to a degree. I think those are decent numbers. But the buy rate, no, I don't think that did an extremely decent number. Maybe more than the current average because of the new paradigm and the current situation we're in when it comes to the COVID-19. But still, I don't think this is going to do blockbuster numbers. I don't think the UFC are going to be excited about it. I think ESPN is going to be fine about it. They were dying for live sports, obviously. The only reason ESPN came in and told Dana White to quit because they got pressure from the governor. Let's be quite honest.
Yeah.
If ESPN could get these cards going without pressure from elected officials, they would do that. Quick also mentioned fight of the night, because this has come out now. Fight of the night: Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Performances of the night: Justin Gaethje and Francis Ngannou. Those are who got awards. Justin Gaethje getting a double bonus on this card. It looks like. Anthony, anything else you want to talk about, man?
I mean, I think we will have future conversations about the ramifications of this card
when we know what those ramifications are.
Right, exactly. I think we might be having some very interesting conversations in about 2 weeks. The Jacare news just blew me out of the water, but it shouldn't have. It was like I was surprised that they let it get that far. According to some reports that I saw, I don't know how verified these reports are. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw Mark Raimondi tweeting about this, and if he was saying this, then I'm sure he verified the hell out of it. But I think Jacare's wife was the family member.
Yes,
that had COVID-19. Yeah, the man's wife has COVID-19, and the UFC knew about this.
Well, did you see why he chose to fight?
Yes, because he was worried about his mortgage payments. He was worried about losing his house. We're talking about a former Strikeforce champion, a perennial top contender in the middleweight division, who wasn't getting paid enough to pay for his home. Now, unless Jacare has some sort of vicious gambling problem or is in debt to the mob or something like that, some sort of crazy financial circumstance that we're not aware of. That is disgusting and gross that a man of his caliber, who has done as much as he's done in the sport, who was just in his last fight, was just in a main event, is worried about his mortgage payments. So he is going to fight in the middle of a global pandemic with his wife, sick with COVID-19. And the UFC is going to know about this. And he still travels to the event site, and he's still mingling amongst the athletes. I think you probably saw Fabricio Verdum's Instagram story where he's front and center right there. Yeah, he did have a mask and gloves on, but still, is this a risk worth taking if you're the UFC?
And I think it's very clear that the UFC doesn't care about that risk and will continue risking the fighters' health and safety, and not only the fighters' health and safety, but their own health and safety and the health and safety of everyone that's around them and that knows them. To be quite honest, and that's how a infectious disease works, guys. It's not like a car accident. That's not how.
You know what? You just don't sound like a freedom-loving American.
I am a libtard, as they say.
Which, hey, you know what? The only way to solve this problem is you need to put an AR-15 over your, like, sling it around your chest, and wear one of and wear one of those, like, those tack vests. That's the only vaccine you need.
That's true. Vaccines are just ways.
Constitution is my vaccine.
I'm totally gonna steal that. That's so good. That's such a good line. I posted like the Jack Ray story and what happened, and how like this shouldn't be a reality. And I think the first reply I got was, "Well, how do you know that he's been like spending his money wisely?" And it was like,
"Fuck off,"
because there's a documented track record of the UFC ripping off fighters more than any other sport. Period.
I'm surprised. I don't even know who his manager is, but I'm surprised his manager didn't angry tweet you about it.
No,
I came for the UFC. That's
I bet we know who that manager is, and maybe he has me blocked. I don't know.
Off the top of my head, I don't know who Jacare's manager is.
Isn't that the manager that manages all the Brazilian fighters, and he doesn't like me? Remember, what's his name? Alex Davis.
Alex Davis don't like you? That actually don't shock me, but
he's not like that. Anyway,
I don't know.
You can find me, Matt Hunter, MCR, on all social media platforms. Hit the like button, share the show, all that fun stuff. Anthony, let people know where they can find you.
You can check me out on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. It's also my Instagram. I pretty much only post pictures of my son now, but check it out anyway. Other than that, you can find my work on SureDog.com. On occasion, you can find some of my work on MMAonPoint. And I was supposed to do another column for my MMA news, but got lost in translation, just personal issues going on in the house and whatnot. We got sidetracked trying to do our show, our hip hop show. Like, both of us jacked up the schedule on that, so we'll have to re-up next week and get that back on the road. So yeah, that's where to find me when I decide to show up.
Wednesday this next week.
Wednesday, yeah, let's do Wednesday. Oh yeah, and then the Walkout Network, my channel, of course, Unleashed, the panel discussion show.
I was on the preview show of UFC 249. Still go check it out because it was a fun show. It was 6 of us all goofing off for most of the show, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
And you guys show that on Tuesday, right? You guys record on Monday.
Yeah, and it comes on Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday, yes, Tuesday. I also link that on our channel as well every week. So if you guys want to find it, you guys can always go to our channel. But digressing, guys, have a great night, great evening, great morning, wherever you are in the world. Hope you guys enjoyed the fights for what they are today. And hope to see you guys back soon. Peace.